right? So we did up to here. The basal bodies, they are basically modified centrioles, or you can say the centriole which forms. Centriole has different functions. Centriole has different functions. If a centriole forms a cilia or a flagella, it is known as the basal body. Okay. Now, this complete organism is covered by a thin proteinaceous covering. This organism is completely covered by a proteinaceous covering known as pellicle. Now, this covering is this pellicle, and this pellicle is, as I just said, it is made up of proteins. It is proteinaceous. Most of the protists have this pellicle. Right? Now, at close to this, the origin of these flagella, there is an orangish spot, reddish orange spot, which is known as stigma. This is known as the stigma. STIGMA. This is stigma. Okay. The stigma is also known as the eye spot. इसे हम और दूसरा क्या नाम देते हैं? This is also known as the eye spot. The eye spot. So the eye spot, right? Okay. Now, as we discussed that it is a plant-like protist, so it must be having a chloroplast. It must be having a chloroplast. So this green structure is basically the chloroplast. The chloroplast. Right? And definitely there would be a nucleus. Nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, this. All these cell organelles would be there. Right? इसमें फ्लैजेला कितने हैं? 2. There are 2 flagella. 2 flagella. This is the larger one, and this is the smaller one. Right? This is another. Right. Now, there are certain other structures in this. You would be able to see certain tiny green structures having 2 areas, distinct 2 areas in it. Now, this structure is known as pyrenoid. It's a characteristic of algae. Pyrenoid. A pyrenoid is a food storing structure. It stores food. This food, which is stored in euglena, is paramylum. The food is paramylum. It's a kind of starch. This word amylum is basically starch. Starch is it's called amylum in Latin language. Latin language में हम इसे क्या बोलते हैं? amylum. Starch is known as amylum. Now, a brief description of pyrenoid. 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 It's food storing. It has two zones, right, or two layers. दो layers होती है इसमें, ठीक है. The inner layer, the inner core, is made up of a protein called rubisco. R-U-B-I-S-C capital O capital. Rubisco. The outer zone has starch in it. Right. Now, what is rubisco? Rubisco. Rubisco is the enzyme which is very, very important in photosynthesis. It is an enzyme which catalyzes carbon dioxide accepting reaction, the dark reaction of photosynthesis. Right. The most abundant protein on earth, most abundant protein on earth is rubisco. The most abundant protein on earth is rubisco. It is this protein. यहीं पे एक चीज लिख देते हैं. The most abundant protein animals collagen. के लिए हमने दो चीजें बता दी. Protein से related, the most abundant protein on earth is this enzyme rubisco, which help in this reaction in which the plants accept carbon dioxide from the environment. Stigma is photosensitive patch, comprises carotenoids, kind of lipids. Fatty substance होते हैं, तो photosynthesis में भी रोल होता है. Carotenoids help in photosynthesis as well. Here, the presence of carotenoids help this organism to detect light. This organism would show movement towards light. Nutrition in euglena. It's a very important topic. Nutrition in euglena. Mixotrophic nutrition. Right. What is mixotrophic nutrition? ये होता क्या है? Mixotrophic nutrition is type is type of nutrition where the organism shows both autotrophic and nutrition, but not at the same time. At the same time. अब इसमें से क्वेश्चन निकल आता है. अब एग्जामिनर आपसे पूछता है, ठीक है, मिक्सोट्रॉफिक न्यूट्रिशन जो है वो एक तरह का न्यूट्रिशन है जिसमें ऑर्गेनिज्म कभी ऑटोट्रॉफिक और कभी हेटरोट्रॉफिक न्यूट्रिशन शो करता है. यूग्लिना कब ऑटोट्रॉफिक न्यूट्रिशन शो करता है और कब हेटरोट्रॉफिक न्यूट्रिशन शो करता है? ऑटोट्रॉफिक यूग्लिना depends on availability of water in the pond, lake, that is the habitat. जिस हैबिटेट में यूग्लिना है उसमें कितना पानी है उसके हिसाब से. अब इस चीज को एक्सप्लेन करते हैं. राइट, लेट अस ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस. Let us suppose this is a water body. Let us suppose this is a water body, right? And this water body is completely filled with water. इसमें ऊपर तक पानी भरा हुआ है. ठीक है, यहाँ तक पानी पानी. Water. This is the water surface. Okay. Now, when it is completely filled with water, Euglena, being an autotrophic organism having a photosensitive eye, it arranges itself parallel to the water surface. ये यहाँ पे अपने आप को अरेंज कर लेता है. Right? Euglena would arrange itself parallel to the water surface so that it can get ample amount of sunlight. Now, let this be the case one, where the water was up to this level, the highest level possible. Now, in next case, what happened? The lake or the pond began to become dry. सूखने लगा. If it would dry, definitely now the surface area, the exposed surface area would reduce. Now this is, let us suppose, the second case. And gradually, what will happen if there are no rains? What do you think will happen? The water would recede further. पानी और नीचे जाना शुरू हो जाएगा. ठीक है. Now when this happens, overlapping of euglena occurs. Now let us suppose this is the case. So some euglena would be in the shadow of the other euglena. They would be forced to go under the others. It's like this. The euglena which are at the surface, at the exposed areas, they can perform photosynthesis. But the ones which are below, they would not be able to perform photosynthesis. They become heterotrophic. These euglena would become heterotrophic. ये हेटरोट्रॉफिक हो जाते हैं. जब ये सरफेस पर एक्सपोज थे, जब इन्हें सनलाइट मिल रही थी, तो ये ऑटोट्रॉफिक थे. राइट. एंड इन नेचुरल कंडीशंस, वैसे तो आप यूग्लिना को अगर आप लेबोरेटरी में डार्क कंडीशंस में रख दें, इफ यू पुट यूग्लिना इन डार्क कंडीशंस इन द लेबोरेटरी, it would start showing heterotrophic nutrition. But under natural conditions, what happens when this euglena is put in ponds or lakes, or it is living in ponds or lakes, right? It is the water, it is the amount of water or the availability of the water which determines what kind of nutrition would be there. The euglena at the surface would show autotrophic nutrition, and the euglena which are under, in fact, euglena begins to attack the other euglena. Euglena is a big group. Sorry. There is a big group having euglena-like organisms. They are known as euglenoids, right? So euglenoids occur in lakes and ponds. It is not just the euglena. So they begin to attack each other. Okay, so this is the concept. This is the answer. In euglena, this depends upon the availability of water in ponds or lakes, that is in the habitat of euglena. If water reduces, then the organism becomes heterotrophic because of this shadowing effect. There would be euglena under euglena. So this is what happens, right? It is so called because it increase the size of this vacuole keeps on changing, right? Amoeba, heterotrophic organism which possesses pseudopodia for locomotion. There's no particular shape as there is no pellicle. The largest amoeba is chaos chaos. Most common type, that is most studied, is the amoeba proteus. It has a contractile vacuole, which is so called because the size of the contractile vacuole can be altered. Now, question. If amoeba is taken from fresh water and in marine water, what happens? The contractile vacuole, क्या होता है उसकी contractile vacuole? ये क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है. ये कंडीशन रिवर्स भी हो सकती है. Now to answer this question, we need to understand the function. What is the function of contractile vacuole? Contractile vacuole is osmoregulatory in function. It is osmoregulatory. Osmoregulatory means maintenance of water balance. Water amount or balance. Right? इसलिए ये क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछा जाता है. Now see, when the amoeba was living in fresh water, there were maximum chances that water would be entering into its body. बहुत chances हैं कि amoeba के अंदर पानी आ रहा होगा. Why? Because the organisms, they have different kinds of chemicals inside the body. Animals जो हैं उनमें अलग अलग तरह के chemicals होते हैं. अच्छा, ये जो chemicals होते हैं, राइट, ये इन्होंने खुद में बनाए होते हैं या स्टोर किया होता है, व्हाटएवर, ठीक है. But these chemicals can attract water. So if amoeba is there and if amoeba was there in freshwater conditions, right? Let us suppose this is the amoeba, and it was in freshwater conditions, right? Let this be the amoeba. So in freshwater conditions, there would have been a constant entry of water into it. पानी यहाँ से अंदर आ रहा होगा. Now, at the expense of energy, Contractile vacuole uses energy, ATP. This contractile vacuole would take up this water and would expel it out. Contractile vacuole keeps on throwing this water outside so that the amoeba doesn't swell up and burst. Right? But if this amoeba is put in marine conditions, it is put in marine water, right? What will happen? In marine water conditions, the contractile vacuole disappears. Contractile vacuole disappears. The reverse would happen. The reverse would happen if we take out amoeba from marine water and we put it into fresh water. Then the contractile vacuole will reappear. The contractile vacuole would reappear. If put in fresh water from marine water, contractile vacuole reappears and becomes large in size. Because definitely in freshwater conditions, the water would be entering into this.